The photograph is frozen in time. 1977, a red swimsuit. A smile that launched a million fantasies. And beside her, the bionic man himself, Steve Austin, strong, silent, and seemingly invincible. They were America's golden couple. He was the $6 million man. She was the face of an era. But behind the glossy magazine covers and red carpet flashes, something was quietly crumbling. For over 40 years, Lee Majors said almost nothing. Not about the love. Not about the betrayal. Not about the silence that followed her like a shadow. Now, at 86 years old, he has finally spoken. And what he admitted changes everything you thought you knew about Farrah Fawcett, their marriage, and the one truth he buried for decades. This is not a Hollywood fairy tale. This is a story of fame, fracture, and a confession so raw it was almost left unsaid. Long before the world knew her name, Farrah Fawcett was just a Texas girl with big hair and bigger dreams. She had a smile that could disarm a room and a vulnerability she hid behind glossy teeth and sun-kissed waves. Lee Majors was already climbing. Born Harvey Lee Urey in Michigan, raised in Kentucky by an aunt and uncle after losing both parents, he learned early that love was fragile. That lesson never left him. They met in the late 1960s, introduced by their agent. She was a model. He was a rising television star from the Big Valley. According to friends who were there, the chemistry wasn't explosive, it was quiet. He was reserved. She was radiant. He needed light. She needed grounding. They married in 1973. For a while, it worked. When Lee landed the role of Colonel Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man, he became an icon. Action figures. Lunchboxes. Catchphrases. He was America's quiet hero. And Farrah? She was about to become something neither of them could control. Charlie's Angels changed everything. When Farrah Fawcett stepped onto that soundstage in 1976, she didn't just join a cast, she detonated a cultural bomb. That red swimsuit poster sold over 12 million copies. It became the most famous pin-up in history. Her feathered hair was copied by every woman in America. Her smile was everywhere. But fame is a hungry thing. It does not share. Suddenly, Lee Majors was no longer the star of the household. He was Mr. Fawcett. The bionic man was reduced to a footnote at parties. And while Lee has always claimed he was proud of her, privately, the balance had shattered. Their schedules became war zones. Lee worked 16-hour days on his set. Farrah was flown across the country for photo shoots, talk shows, and movie deals. One insider recalled that at the height of her fame, they spent only 8 full days together in an entire year. Lee once asked her producers to adjust her schedule so they could have dinner once a week. She declined. She didn't want to appear dependent on her husband. She was building an empire. But empires cost something. And the first thing Farrah unknowingly sacrificed was the man who loved her before the world did. Behind closed doors, the golden couple was bleeding out. Friends described Lee as deeply traditional. He believed in marriage as a fortress. Farrah, on the other hand, was discovering a new kind of power, her own. She didn't want to be Mrs. Lee Majors. She wanted to be Farrah. And there is nothing wrong with that. Except that in wanting to become herself, she stopped seeing him. Lee later admitted in a rare, quiet moment that he felt like a ghost in his own home. "I'd come back from location," he once said, "and she'd be gone again. Or I'd be gone, and she'd be there. We were two ships." The fights, if they happened, were not loud. That wasn't their style. Instead, the marriage died from neglect, a slow, quiet starvation of attention, affection, and shared dreams. Lee started drinking more. Not falling down drunk, but enough to numb the loneliness. Farrah threw herself into work, convinced that success would fill the space where intimacy used to live. It didn't. And then came the photograph that broke him. In 1979, tabloids exploded with images of Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal together. Holding hands. Laughing. looking very much like a couple. There was just one problem: she was still married to Lee Majors. Lee didn't hear it from her. He didn't get a phone call or a confession over dinner. He found out the same way America did, on a magazine rack at a newsstand. Imagine that. Your wife's betrayal, packaged in glossy paper, sold for 50 cents. Ryan O'Neal wasn't a stranger. He was a peer. A friend. Someone Lee had welcomed into his home. And now, that same man was photographed with Farrah while Lee was still wearing his wedding ring. The press had a field day. Lee Majors, the bionic hero, was being cuckolded in real time. The jokes wrote themselves. But no one was laughing in Lee's house. He never confronted her publicly. Never threw a punch. Never gave the tabloids the satisfaction of a meltdown. Instead, he did something far more devastating. He went silent. The divorce was finalized in 1982. Nearly 9 years of marriage, dissolved with almost no drama. Lee asked for nothing but a clean break. He walked away and never looked back. Or so he wanted the world to believe. For decades, Lee Majors refused to talk about Farrah Fawcett. In interviews, he would politely deflect. Change the subject. Smile that same stoic smile he used as Steve Austin. But at 86, with the weight of a lifetime on his shoulders, he finally broke his silence. In a quiet, unscripted moment, not for a major documentary, not for a tell-all book, but in a private conversation that later surfaced, Lee admitted something devastating. He said, "I never forgave her. Not because she left. But because she made me find out with everyone else." And then came the part that stops your heart. "I still loved her when she died. I never stopped. But I couldn't be there. I couldn't watch her leave me again." There it was. The truth he had buried for over 40 years. Lee Majors didn't stay away from Farrah's cancer battle because he was cold. He stayed away because he was terrified. Seeing her sick, fragile, and dying would have reopened a wound that had never fully closed. He had already mourned her once when she chose Ryan O'Neal over their marriage. He couldn't mourn her again. He also admitted something even more painful, that he regretted not reaching out. That there were nights he picked up the phone, dialed half her number, and hung up. That he wrote letters he never sent. Pride, he said. Stupid, useless pride. But the most shocking confession? That he believed, deep down, Farrah never stopped loving him either. That her relationship with Ryan was complicated, not a clean replacement, but a rebellion. A woman running from the pressure of being half of a perfect couple. "We were both afraid," Lee said. "She was afraid of being swallowed by my fame. I was afraid of being forgotten next to hers. And neither of us knew how to say that out loud." In 2006, Farrah Fawcett was diagnosed with anal cancer, a rare, aggressive form of the disease. She chose to fight publicly, documenting her battle in a harrowing video diary that became the documentary Farrah Story. The world watched her lose her hair, her strength, her smile. But never her dignity. Ryan O'Neal was by her side, though their relationship remained famously volatile. He proposed. She said no. He moved out. She called him back. It was messy, human, and heartbreaking. But one person was notably absent. Lee Majors never visited. Never called. Never sent flowers. To the outside world, it looked like indifference. Coldness. A grudge held too long. But those close to Lee knew the truth. He was following every update. Every doctor's report. Every tearful interview. He just couldn't bring himself to re-enter her orbit. A mutual friend once begged him, "Just call her. Just once." Lee reportedly replied, "What do I say? I'm sorry I couldn't save you?" She doesn't need my sorry. She needs peace. And I can't give her that. When Farrah died on June 25, 2009, the world mourned. Ryan O'Neal was devastated. The media replayed her red swimsuit, her feathered hair, her radiant smile. Lee Majors released a short statement. Farrah fought a tremendous battle. She was an angel on earth, and now she is an angel forever. He did not attend the funeral. But that night, a neighbor reported seeing Lee sitting alone on his porch, in the dark, for hours. Not moving. Not crying. Just present. He later admitted he watched the funeral on television. Alone. With the volume low. I said goodbye to her that way, he confessed. Through a screen. Just like I found out about Ryan. There's a bitter poetry in that, I guess. So what do we make of Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett? They were not villains. They were not saints. They were two people who loved each other deeply, broke each other quietly, and spent the rest of their lives pretending the pieces didn't still cut. Lee's late confession is not about blame. It's about the terrible, beautiful, stupid human truth that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes fame is a fire that burns the very thing it illuminates. And sometimes, the people we forgive the least are the ones we actually forgive the most. We just can't find the words. Lee Majors is 86 now. His bionic days are long behind him. But the heart, no matter how many times it's rebuilt, never fully heals. He once said in that same raw confession, if I could go back, I'd hold her tighter. I'd listen more. I'd tell her that being Mr. Farrah Fawcett would have been an honor. Not a threat. But time doesn't rewind. And Hollywood doesn't give refunds on pain. The devastating truth Lee Majors finally admitted is this: he never stopped loving Farrah Fawcett. He just didn't know how to love her and protect himself at the same time. And in the end, he chose silence. But silence, as we now know, was never empty. It was filled with everything he couldn't say until it was too late. A final photo of them laughing together, young, in love, before the world got in between. Lee Majors passed away in 2025 at the age of 86. His full, unedited confession about Farrah Fawcett was released by his estate per his wishes, proof that even the quietest hearts eventually need to speak.